point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 501st edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell, who is not, as you can see, in the studio. He's at home.
But I'm not in the studio.
He's in the flesh, but not in the studio. Well, what a remarkable thing. Okay, this is the 501st episode. We're recording on the 8th of December, 2022. Our first day is Thursday, December 1, that we are reporting from that. And so we have many things to say. And you can get links to the original articles by going to geoharvey.com and clicking on the calendar date and looking through the usually 15 articles that are there for the one that you want. Or you can do the simpler thing and go to the website that is listed on the below with the program. So you can just scroll down on your computer and go to the website.
I'll try to mention the source of the article as we go.
Yeah.
Because I have that information.
So you all set, Tom? I'm gonna put on.
I'm looking at a picture of a California aqueduct.
Yes. That's what I'm looking at too, and that's what all the people are looking at too, if they're looking at their screen.
I think they are.
Yeah.
Well, this is from CNN,
yes.
And it says that, I quote, more than 70 water agencies in California could face water shortages in the coming months.
Yeah, the California Department of Water.
But not surprising.
Yeah. California Department of Water Resources issued a report on its water supply. Nearly 20% of the urban water agencies, now this is urban, you'll notice, said they could see significant water shortages in the coming months in the state's potential fourth consecutive year of drought. And that's not a joke. They are having trouble with drought.
Which has a lot of effects on a lot of people because much of our produce in the whole country comes from Southern California.
I think 50% of it comes from an area which is now in a severe drought. And has been.
Valley, and it's basically a desert.
Yeah.
And they made it fertile and flush by bringing in water from the Colorado River.
Yeah, and the Colorado River doesn't have much water anymore.
Well, there have been times in the past year or so where it did no longer reach the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
Oh, Gulf of Lower California, I guess it is.
That picture, by the way, is not from the middle of the drought. That picture is, I believe, from before the drought, but it's certainly not this year.
Looks pretty lush.
Pretty lush. Those trees that are obviously in an orchard, I think, are probably almond trees. So.
Well, they've been planted because they're all in Eden.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay, you all set? Go on?
Yeah, I think we can go on. We got another picture here of
it says
semiconductors.
Yeah, it's not chips. It says chips. It's not chips. These are circuit boards. And they're very small boards. This is a big enlargement of them. And I think they must be printed this way, and because those things in the middle that have squares and then little rows of rectangles around them are places where integrated circuit chips would be put.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah,
they put the components on these boards.
Yeah. Okay, this is from Clean Technica. What do you got for a title?
The semiconductor shortage could soon become a glut of chips.
Yeah.
Wow.
The shortage of chips needed for advanced technologies may soon turn into a surplus, ending the semiconductor shortage that has afflicted the automotive industry for almost 2 years. VNC Automobile, an in-vehicle networking specialist, believes the recession could cause the change. Well, we've got, cars are not being produced in the numbers that they should because of this shortage, but other things too. There's a lot of things that need these, and almost anything that is large and at all automated today, and that would include washing machines and refrigerators and television sets and on and on and on, have got computers in them. So,
well, these are what they call interesting times.
I've been told that. Yeah. You
Right.
believe?
Clean Technical, and they provide a lot of good information for us.
Yes, indeed.
So I'll be moving on.
Okay. We have a forest in Quebec here as a picture. I'm going to put
Well, it says it's in Quebec, but it could very well be in Vermont.
Well, I used to live in Winchester, New Hampshire, and this particular bit of forest, if you had just shown it to me, I would have had to do a double take before I realized that it wasn't the wood road that I walked on often when I was a child, and up until only about 15 or 18 years ago. There was a part of that wood road that just looked exactly like this. And
Mountain National Forest over by Bennington looks very much the same.
Yeah. Well, this almost looks like it has the same trees. This is from the BBC. What do you have for a title?
Canadian ambassador tells the EU that deforestation rules are burdensome. Aww.
Canada's ambassador to the EU voiced concern with proposed EU rules to curb deforestation. The regulation is intended to limit the trade of products linked to deforestation worldwide. Climate campaigners have called Canada's resistance to the world, quote, shocking, end quote.
Well, it is.
I suppose it is, Tom.
Guys, we're really taking advantage of them. We're placing these burdensome rules on them.
Well, the thing is, if you pay attention to the Drax power station in England, the Drax station used to be the biggest coal-burning power plant in the UK. It doesn't burn coal anymore. Now it burns in 3 of its stations. It's burning natural gas, and in the other 3, it's burning wood chips. And
Yeah, we have one in Vermont that burns wood.
what?
We have a generating station in Vermont that burns wood.
We may have more than one. I know there's one up by Rutland.
Well,
Not Rutland, I mean Burlington.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. That's
Yeah.
pretty big.
It's actually pretty big, yeah. And they are very careful to do their forest management to make sure that they don't deplete the forests. But
They do a good
Drax,
job there.
what?
They do a good job there.
Yeah, I think they do. Drax had promised that they would not burn anything except forest falls and wood waste and things like that. And no sooner did they get into business, apparently they started really quickly in buying wood that had been clear cut in Georgia. And they stopped that and went to forestry that was clear cutting in Canada. And of course, clear cutting forests is not a good idea when you're talking about addressing climate change. So,
Not if you want to consider the health of the forest.
or the health of the earth, or the continuation of the human race, or any of a number of
Things
other
like that.
Yeah, I think we should probably think about whether or not we're going to survive. Okay, should I go on, Tom?
I was just thinking sometimes it's better not to think about whether we're going to survive.
Yeah.
Kinda depressing.
This next one is what I think is a fascinating story.
We got a good picture here of growing things underneath the solar panels.
In this case, tomatoes.
You say tomato. I say tomatoes. You say tomatoes.
Well, I came from a part of the United States where people behaved like they were born and raised in England.
Well, this came from Clean Technica, and it says agrivoltaics, agrivoltaics, solar panels and tomatoes may be perfect for each other.
Perfect. Agrivoltaics can increase yields for farmers. A research paper published by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory surveyed agrivoltaic research all across America. It noted that on average, yields of tomatoes doubled compared to non-agrivoltaic sites.
And that's interesting. They're getting more yield out of the tomatoes.
Double. They're doubling the yield. So if a farmer is raising tomatoes, he can have a field of tomatoes and get the money for raising the tomatoes, or he can get twice that amount of money from the tomatoes and whatever he gets from the solar panels.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me. It's two streams of income coming in.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not just tomatoes that do better under solar panels either.
Well, you could grow almost anything under those panels there, except maybe corn.
Well, actually, I read of somebody who was growing corn. They had to raise the panels up a little bit.
Pretty high off the ground, so you can raise corn.
Yeah, but they were growing. Actually, Tom, we had one where somebody had planted cherry trees under the solar panels.
Talked about that. They were kind of dwarf cherry trees.
That's right. Yeah.
So this is an area that is definitely makes sense that it's going to grow.
I absolutely agree. I think this just makes perfect sense.
Let's move along here and see a picture of a destroyed building. Apparently, one of them in the Tampa, Florida area.
Yep, and let me put that up. This is that building, by the way, was not destroyed directly by Hurricane Ian. It was destroyed by a tornado that was spawned by Hurricane Ian, which is why the damage is kind of located in one place. But
Hurricane Ian hit central Vermont or central Florida pretty hard.
It sure did, no question about that. This is from CNN.
It is that. I was just going to say that. Insured losses from disasters will exceed $100 billion for a second year in a row, led by Hurricane Ian.
Yes, preliminary analysis by Swiss Re, that is a reinsuring company, found that 2022 was the second year in a row in which insured losses are expected to exceed $100 billion. That's in the United States. Swiss Re said losses trended up each year at a rate of 5 to 7% over the last decade. And
not good news.
What's that?
Not good news.
No, it's not. And actually, this $100 billion amount is significantly less than other amounts that I've read about from other estimates. And there have been estimates where it's over $200 billion. We've got a problem. Things are getting worse.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Move on.
We got to learn to stop burning things.
We have to stop burning things. That's right.
We got a picture of a Ford Mustang Mach 1. If you notice, it doesn't have a grill.
Tom likes the idea of not having a grill. This is from Clean Technica. What do you got for a title?
Ford to bump Mustang Mach 1 Mach E production to 270,000 a year. Well, that number doesn't mean anything to me, but I think he'll explain what it means.
Yep, Ford is the second best-selling electric car brand in the United States. Now it's accelerating Mustang Mach-E production and targeting a total annual production rate of 270,000 per year as part of a plan to scale up to a rate of 600,000 per year for electric vehicles annually. That would include the Mustang Mach-E, the Ford F-100 Lightning, which is also an electric vehicle, all electric. And they're going to do this by the end of 2023. So 1 year from now, they're going to be making 600,000 a year, they plan. And they're planning for 2 million a year by 2026.
Well, I think they could do that.
Well, they might. They are one of two companies that's really really after this, two traditional, actually, there's a lot of companies doing it, but GM has Mary Barra, who's the CEO of GM, said that they were going to be way ahead of Tesla very soon. And of course, the problem is Ford is doing the same thing. Everybody wants to do the same thing all at once.
Well, they're moving in an inevitable direction.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Combustion engine is technically already history.
Yep. So we're up to Saturday, and that is December 3rd, I think. Is that right, Tom?
Saturday, December 3.
Very good. And we have a picture.
Picture of a nodding donkey in the sunset. Or is it the sunrise?
Okay, now my computer that I'm showing these things on has decided that it wants to tell me to remind it of something, or it wants to remind me of something. So here is the picture of the nodding donkey. We have an article from BBC, and I think Tom has a title for that.
Well, we'll try. Quote, Ukraine war. G7 and allies approve cap on the price of Russian oil.
Yeah, this is an interesting development. The G7 group and its allies, what's that?
The G7 is the group of seven.
That's right. The G7 and its allies have officially approved a cap on the price of Russian oil. The price cap will come into force on the 5th of December, and of course, as we're recording this, that means it's already there, or very soon thereafter. The plan, which stops countries from paying more than $60 a barrel, is needed the agreement of all of the EU states. So all of the states in the European Union had to vote to support this.
And they have.
And they have. And what it means is they will buy Russian oil, but not at a price that's above $60 per barrel. So they're going to be, if they need oil and the Russians refuse to sell it at $60 a barrel, they'll just get it from somebody else. And, you know, this is like, it's like...
Well, Russia seems to have a tendency to try to profit from this, and the other countries are a little bit upset about that.
Yes. Russia is profiting from its own invasion of Ukraine. And there's no doubt in my mind that they fully intended to do that when they invaded.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Well, we got another article from Clean Technica coming up.
We do.
And it's a picture of a
Tesla. Semi.
a Tesla truck being tested.
That's right. That's what it is. This is from Clean Technica?
From Clean Technica, that says Tesla Series, Tesla Semi reveal. I can't even read my own notes. Tesla Semi reveal. Huge power, huge charging ability.
Yep. Tesla held its long-awaited ceremony to introduce its electric Class 8 tractor, known simply as the Tesla Semi, on December 1st. You can watch a video of it at this article. In it, you will see Elon Musk. What's that?
It's a good video, but it's a half an hour long.
Yeah. You'll see Elon Musk drive a white Semi on stage, followed by two others decked out in Pepsi and Frito-Lay livery.
That's exactly what you see.
And they've started delivering these things to Pepsi, and you know, the Pepsi and Frito-Lay stuff. They're serious about this.
Well, it's interesting because this truck is more powerful than the diesels.
Yes.
It has a range of 500 miles per charge.
Yes.
So they're not playing games here.
No, they're not playing games. This is a
And
serious...
a Class 8 truck, for what it's worth, is a vehicle with a gross vehicle weight exceeding 33,000 pounds, which is, Tennessee Ernie could tell you, is 16 tons.
You're saying Tennessee Ernie Ford. Are you leaving the Ford part out so we don't think of Ford Motors?
I didn't want to confuse things.
Ah, okay. Well...
Typical 5-auto tractor-trailer combination.
Yeah.
The Class 3 truck. Class 8 truck.
Class 8 truck.
Also called a semi or an 18-wheeler, is a Class 8 vehicle, and there is no Class 9, so this is the biggest class of trucks that exists.
Well, it's the biggest class that goes on the road. I'm thinking.
Yeah,
of that,
right.
Thinking of that picture of the new scale small modular reactor where the trailer had 128 tires on it, and I'm not sure how many were on the tractor, but I think it might have been 26.
Well, it's more than 18, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, you can't dance. We got another picture of a car. How about that?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of work in cars these days. This is from Clean Technica. And the car is a 2023 Honda CR-V.
Honda to build a fuel cell car based on the CR-V in 2024.
Yes, indeed. Honda announced this week that it will begin manufacturing a fuel cell vehicle based on the popular CR-V at its Performance Manufacturing Center in Ohio in 2024.
In the United States.
Absolutely. The car will be North America's first production vehicle to combine a plug-in feature with fuel cell EV technology. Now, if they're going to combine a plug-in feature, then I think they must have a battery in that also. So.
Well, some sort of battery. The fuel cell itself is a sort of a battery.
Well, it is, but you don't plug a fuel cell in to charge it, do you? Well, actually, you could. You could have a bidirectional fuel cell. I'd forgotten about that.
Like that. Well, a fuel cell is a kind of battery.
Yeah.
Okay? First, the thermal energy of a fuel,
Yeah.
which is often hydrogen,
Yes.
and an oxidizing agent, which is often oxygen, into
Yes.
electricity. So I think that this is possibly a fuel cell that does get recharged.
Okay. Good enough.
You know, I've said this on the show before. They've done more improvements in battery technology in the last year than they did in the previous century.
I think that's probably true. Okay, we have a picture now of a Mercedes E-Sprinter, which is...
I don't think they import that vehicle here.
What's that?
I don't think they import that vehicle to the U.S.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think Mercedes brings in small trucks, but they do a good job with cars.
They do, and they also have big trucks. This is from Clean Technica. What do you have for a title?
New Mercedes E-Sprinter goes 475 kilometers to in real world driving.
Yeah, the Mercedes E-Sprinter has been for sale in Europe for some time, but its range has been just under 100 miles, and that's too short for most customers. Now, Mercedes is about to start production of the next generation E-Sprinter, which is able to go over 475 kilometers, which is
300 miles.
Yeah, almost 300 miles on a single charge. And 100 miles is plenty.
That's practical.
Yeah, 100 miles is plenty if you're going to be using the vehicle for local deliveries. But it's not enough for a lot of applications. So it's easy to understand why people would want to do things differently than that. You have longer range.
Well, every time we have somebody's come up with a little bit better range or a little bit better performance, and
That's right.
as I said before, the internal combustion engine is waving bye-bye.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, our next item is from CNBC.
And it's a full parking lot in Disneyland.
Yeah, and it's I think a kind of a remarkable picture. Let me put it up for the audience. There we go. It's kind of a remarkable picture. It almost looks like some kind of art from 1955 or something like that, pop art.
Well, it's interesting because it's a parking lot, but there's no vehicles in it.
Yeah, I know.
But they put a roof on it, and the roof has solar panels, I believe.
I think that's the point of the picture.
Well, that's why they call it a solar parking lot.
Well, you might be right. Now that you mention that, it could be. This is from CNBC.
Well, parking lots are becoming as important as cars in climate change efforts.
Yeah, a new law in France, and I have written an article about this for Green Energy Times, which is about to come out. A new law in France requires that parking lots with 80 or more spaces be covered with solar panels within 3 years. The biggest parking lots, those with over 400 spaces, have been given 3 years for at least half of the parking lot surface to be covered by solar. Now, do you have any notes on this article? Because I can talk about it.
Well, for what it's worth, the Brattleboro Transportation Center garage right here has 310 spaces.
Okay.
Give you an idea of how big they're talking about.
Yeah, but the only part of that would be covered in this scheme would be the roof.
The roof, of course. The
However,
rest of it is already covered.
yeah. The article goes on to say that this law is going to produce 11 gigawatts of solar capacity. That's a lot. And on top of that,
Anytime you see the word giga, it means bigger.
that's right. And they say this is it will produce electricity equivalent to 10 nuclear reactors. And you know, when I saw that, I said, no way. No, there's no way you're going to be able to get 10 nuclear reactors, or the equivalent of that, out of 11 gigawatts of solar power. So I started looking into the law, and what I found out was this law does a lot more than just cover parking lots. It covers rooftops of buildings, it covers sidewalks, it covers other places where people gather in cities, it covers the railroad alongside the tracks, and you think about railroad tracks in Europe, that's a lot of space. And then it covers certain types of farmland. So, where of course they might be growing tomatoes and get double the production. But clearly this is a very big thing. It's not just parking lots. How they could get 10 nuclear reactors worth of stuff out of that, the numbers just don't add up in this article. And the numbers in the article, and I checked it, actually do come from the government. And the government did not, and I'm talking about the government of France, the government of France did not, as far as I could tell, do anything to clarify that. So we're just going to have to say, okay, we got a whole bunch of gigawatts of power coming from this solar stuff, but I don't know much more than that. 11 gigawatts of solar capacity is a lot of solar capacity, but it's kind of the equivalent of 3 nuclear reactors, maybe 4.
Well, parking lots with solar on top of them makes a lot of sense.
Sure does, and so do railroad sidings and alongside the tracks and the rooftops of various buildings, in municipal buildings and state buildings and stuff like that. There's a lot of sense in this.
Well, one of the drawbacks of solar power is it takes up a lot of real estate.
Yes, it is.
So
it does.
So something else, it's a win-win.
Yeah, and of course it takes up a lot of real estate, so we're going to have a lot of tomatoes. We're going to have a world with lots of tomatoes.
Something like that.
Okay. Are you ready to go on to the next item, Tom?
And we got a picture coming from K-Bon2. KHON2. It's a radio station, I guess.
A picture. Oh, KHON2, yes. The picture actually comes from UCAR. It's public domain. But let me put the picture up, and so people are going to be a little confused by this picture. What it looks like.
It's in Honolulu.
It's on Mauna Loa, and I've spelled Mona incorrectly on this thing, and it's not supposed to be M-O-N-A, it's M-A-U-N-A. But nevertheless, the observatories on Mauna Loa that you see here are not astronomical observatories. They don't have telescopes to look at stars and planets and things like that in them. They are for sensing various things about the atmosphere, including the the amount of carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere. And so,
Which is a significant thing to be sensing.
sure. And this is basically worldwide because Hawaii is out in the middle of the ocean, and Mauna Loa is in a place where there's not a lot of air pollution from local power plants or things like that. They can get a pretty good sense of what the carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere is on a worldwide basis from that one sensing point.
That's interesting.
And
An important thing to know.
yeah, it is, absolutely. So what do you got for a title, Tom?
Restoring observatory access is key to climate science.
Yes. And the synopsis here says, so far Mauna Loa's lava flow has been a spectacle and not a disaster, except for the Mauna Loa Observatory, which you're seeing the picture of right now, which is worldwide headquarters for collection of climate change data. The lava from the volcano's eruptions have cut off access and power for the foreseeable future. So,
Not good news.
no, it's not good news. You know, but the fact is, they're probably going to be able to do to work at that place without driving to it with a car. That's the first thing. I mean, the people who work in astronomical observatories very often go and just stay there for months and months and don't leave, because very often it's not possible to leave on a short-term basis unless you
Often
there's
pretty
an
re-
emergency. What?
They're often pretty remote.
They're often very remote, and in this particular case, they have to drive on a highway which is not accessible right now, and I would imagine that the air quality at this place might be not very good, depending upon the direction of the wind, because volcanic activity tends to produce a lot of sulfur dioxide and things like that get into the air and change things. But nevertheless, you know, there it is. So
Well, coming up on Monday, December 5th, and we got a kind of a blue picture there
yes,
of a monsoon.
it's an arriving monsoon, and this is from CNET, CNET.
Which I think is a television station in Canada.
Sounds like it could be, yeah.
Well, in any case, weather whiplash could be as a disturbing new normal in a weird warming world.
Right. In
Weather
northern
whiplash in a weird warming world.
Okay. In northern New Mexico, the year began with months of unseasonal heat, dryness, and extreme wind that fueled the largest wildfire of the year in the lower 48 states. That means that it's the largest wildfire in the lowest 48 states for the year. That's not really well worded. Then the annual monsoon rains dumped nearly twice as much moisture as the previous year. So that's weather whiplash, where you go from a drought, wildfires, destroyed crops because everything's dry, and all of a sudden you're up to your knees in water.
That's what's happening. It's overly dry one day, and then it's overly wet.
Yeah, and that happened in Pakistan too. They had a drought. The farmers were having a terrible time trying to raise crops. And
All it rained.
and then it rained, and a third of the entire country was underwater. And that's not a joke. It wasn't. That's what they said. They said it was a third of the country.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to have more for that, or should I go on again?
Move on. We got a nice picture of a container ship.
We do. This is a Maersk
That
container
has
ship.
those containers on there, huh?
What's that?
Look how they stack those containers
Yeah,
on
I
there.
know. Every time I see a ship like that, it drives me bonkers. I just think to myself, how in the world do they do that? And those cranes, which are on the left there, which don't look like cranes really, they look like something I don't know what they look like, but
They are cranes.
they are cranes, and they're on wheels, so they can move back and forth across the ship. So
Well, that's how they're getting all those containers on the ship.
yeah, that's right.
Therefore,
Yeah. So, this is from Clean Tactica. What do you got for a title?
the EU agrees to include shipping in emissions trading systems.
Yeah, the EU emissions trading system is the oldest and largest program of its type, but it has had a big weakness. It covered power stations and factories, but it did not cover emissions from shipping. In a landmark accord last week, negotiators agreed to correct that oversight. So they're actually regulating the amount of emissions from ships coming to the EU. And that is going to make a difference worldwide.
I think this whole idea of emissions trading is kind of deceptive.
Yeah?
It's kind of they're saying, well, I can emit all the emissions I want to as long as I offset them by trades.
In some cases they do that, yeah. In other cases, like, automobile emissions, they actually test the cars. And that, of course, leads to organizations like Volkswagen and other companies to figure out ways to trick the emissions testers.
They wouldn't do a thing like that.
No, they wouldn't do a thing like that. It just cost them billions of dollars when they got caught.
Well, good for them.
Yeah. Yeah, now they're paying for all kinds of things. Okay.
Move along, we're going to see something that I never thought I would see, an electric airplane.
Yeah, we talked about this electric airplane last week.
Yeah, we did.
And this is from Z News, which is I think Z News is in New Zealand.
I think you're right. Well, the Airbus is looking at India for green hydrogen supply,
Yeah.
ambitious zero-emission aircraft. I never thought I would see zero-emission aircraft.
Yeah, in this case, the aircraft is not flying on batteries. It's using a fuel cell system, and it's powering that with hydrogen, which is liquid hydrogen stored in cryogenic storage tanks. This is a very different way.
How to do that?
Yeah. European aerospace major Airbus is looking to source green hydrogen from markets like India, Australia, and Latin America as part of its decarbonization efforts, a senior official said. Airbus will use the fuel in hydrogen-powered airplanes. Now, there's one thing that the article really doesn't go into, but I find really interesting about this, and that is they're going to be getting this hydrogen, which is manufactured locally at airports that have Airbuses stopping at them.
Oh,
And that means that there is not going to be a location where, like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Iran and Iraq and so forth, have oil which gets shipped all over the world. With renewable energy, the energy can be local. It can be transmitted a certain distance. But hydrogen can be manufactured wherever there's energy and water. And so they can do this all over the world and have the hydrogen for an airport manufactured very near the airport, maybe even at the airport.
yeah, right. I was going to say right at the airport.
Yeah. And
Well, green hydrogen is hydrogen made from green sources,
that's right. So
which would be renewables.
yeah, if they make this stuff from solar and wind or hydropower or whatever that is renewable, that is not producing carbon emissions, then they're going to be able to fly planes on fuel that does not make carbon emissions.
Which is a step in the right direction.
Right. These planes, by the way, will continue to make contrails because they are going to be using up hydrogen and emitting water vapor. So they will still make contrails. They'll be a lot quieter, though. Okay, we're up to Tuesday. And that's what, the 5th?
The sixth.
6th.
The
Okay.
sixth.
Okay, we have a picture from Energy Live News, an article from Energy Live. What's that, Tom?
There's a whole bunch of turbines sit there in a row like soldiers.
Yeah, I guess they are. Okay, what do you have for title?
Global renewables capacity to double in the next 5 years. Well, that's good news.
Yep. This is kind of stunning on the one hand, and on the other hand, kind of something that you would expect. Global renewable energy capacity is predicted to double in the next 5 years, driven by energy supply concerns due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the International Energy Agency said. Growth in renewables is also driven by new policies in the United States, China, and India. So they're expecting the amount of renewable energy producing electricity and so forth to double in 5 years.
Is the economics stupid?
Well, it is, but it's also, when Russia invaded the Ukraine, it was pretty obvious that Russia was holding the world kind of hostage.
Hostage, exactly.
And they wanted to jack up the price of oil and gas, but I think they didn't consider what would happen, and because the Europeans would not just bow to them and say, yeah, you can have Ukraine if you'll reduce the price of oil.
Renewables capacity is growing. I mean, after all, you don't have to pay for the fuel.
Yeah, and you don't have to support a Russian invasion of Ukraine either. So I'm going to, should we go on to the next article, Tom?
It can't dance. You got a picture here of the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yes, and it's something that I look at that and I think I've been there. I don't think I've been on that street, but I used to go to school in Brooklyn, and there it is.
And I worked right down by that when I was working for the Transit Authority on J Street.
Is that actually the Brooklyn Bridge? That's not the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, that's the Brooklyn Bridge. That's the Brooklyn Bridge.
All right, I will take. It says Brooklyn Bridge on the caption, but
I think it is.
okay, I'm not going to argue with you. This is from CNN, so you've got a title, and we can argue over that. How about that? Is that a deal?
Energy company turning city blocks greener.
Right. Block Power, a Brooklyn-based clean energy company, is bringing all-electric heating and cooling systems to older buildings in lower-income areas to reduce carbon footprints and energy bills. The Block Power saves building owners between 20% and 40% annually and increases property values. So,
talked about something like this in the past.
We've talked about stuff, particularly stuff going on in Brooklyn.
Exactly.
I don't know why it is, but the people in Brooklyn seem to be really pursuing this. So there you go.
Let's move along.
I will do as you say, Tom.
Well, we got a picture there of a cow being terribly disturbed by a couple of wind turbines.
Oh, yeah, I know. Actually, there's a bunch of cows here, and they all look frantic, don't they?
Don't they?
Let me put this up so people can actually see what we're talking about. Those cows are standing up. You would think at this time of day that they'd be lying down and chewing their cud, but instead they're just kind of poking through life, saying, that wind turbine has got me upset. This is from Teslarati. What do you got for a title?
Rivian makes a huge investment into renewables to power their operations.
Okay. Rivian, I should explain, is a company that is turning out electric pickup trucks. Rivian signed a power purchase agreement with Apex Clean Energy to supply their manufacturing facility in Normal, Illinois. Normal is the name of the municipality, to supply that facility with wind power. Rivian will invest an unstated amount in 50 megawatts of wind energy that will supply the company's operations at the factory. Now, 50 megawatts of wind, and might be, I'm going to say, $65-75 million. So.
Well, Rivian is an American electric vehicle manufacturer, as you already mentioned.
Yes.
They currently build electric SUVs, pickup trucks, and delivery vans in the U.S.
Yes.
And they plan to build an exclusive charging network in the U.S. and Canada by the end of 2023, which is coming up. So they're not only building the electric vehicles, they're building a charging network for them.
Yes. Well, that's something that Tesla did that, and it was pretty successful. Other companies have done that kind of thing. Ford and GM are both pushing.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. In fact, today there was an article, which I don't think we're going to talk about it next week, but it did appear at the blog today, which said that GM was pairing with another company I didn't recognize the name of to produce charging stations in Wisconsin and Michigan. But there you have it. We are up to Wednesday, December 7th.
Interesting picture of a sailing craft.
Yep, and I happen to know what my father was doing and my mother was doing on December 7th, 1941. How about that?
Well, that was Pearl Harbor.
That's right. My father was an officer in the Navy, and he was the engineering officer at that time on a destroyer mine layer, which was in Pearl Harbor when the harbor was bombed.
Well, it makes sense. What they're doing here makes sense. These ships traverse long areas, long terrain over the ocean.
That's right. Long
If
distances.
they offset some of their diesel power
Right.
with wind, good for them.
Yeah. Let's. This is from Clean Technica. Do you have a title for it?
Wind power to cut cargo ship emissions by 20%.
Well, this is, of course, it's just the time to do this because the EU has decided that it's going to regulate the amount of carbon emissions from the ships coming into its ports. Here is one more threat to the fossil fuel stakeholders who plan to continue employing that, quote, high carbon lifestyle, end quote. Sea-Wing, a retrofit for cargo vessels that supplies old-fashioned sailing ship technology to harvest energy from wind power, aims to cut emissions by 20% by reducing fuel consumption. 20%.
It makes sense. Really. Why didn't I think of that?
Well, there have been people who have been pursuing this idea of getting energy from wind. We've seen those things that look like smokestacks on ships.
Yes, we have. We've talked about
Yeah. So this is not a surprise to me. And this
Not at all, but it makes sense.
the thing that really makes sense about this is that it's a retrofit for an existing ship. So they can just put a sail on that ship, or in this case, a thing that looks kind of like a kite. But
Well, it is a sort of a sail.
yeah, it is. It is indeed. So there we have it.
Moving right along.
Moving right along. Let me bring the next picture up. Whoops, that wasn't the next picture. That was the next picture. This
We got a
is,
picture of a Tesla Model S.
we have a picture of a Tesla Model S, and it's being tested. And if you look at this thing, you'll see that there's a wheeled vehicle to the right of it, which is blue. And right at the point where the two of them are apparently in contact, you'll see dust or smoke or something rising up. I think this was a test of a Tesla Model S being broadsided, just to find out what would happen to the passengers.
Oh, okay. Notice there's no grill on that car.
Yeah, as I said before, Tom loves these cars with no grill. This is from Clean Technica.
Tesla Model S tops the Euro NCAP safety tests.
Right.
And NCAP stands for New Car Assessment Programs.
Right. Just months after the Tesla Model Y earned the highest score in history on the European Safety Index, another Tesla model set another record. The luxury Model S sedan broke the record for the European New Car Assessment Program's safety score ceiling, surpassing even the Model Y, which had the record just months ago. And so we've had this happen twice in just a very short period of time where some Tesla has come to market. And when it was tested, it has been found to be the safest car in history, or in the history of the test.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And you know, one of the things that really interests me about this is that people who complain about electric cars very often say, well, they're not safe. You know, they have fires and things like that. And
Yeah, well, gasoline burns, you know.
gasoline does burn, and the idea of bringing, 10 gallons of gasoline into your garage and closing the garage door when maybe the gas tank has got a pinhole leak in it.
We take it for granted, but it's actually dangerous.
The gasoline is pretty dangerous. If you ask the National Rifle Association, they'll tell you it's safer to have a pound of gunpowder in your closet. And I'm talking about not ammunition, but gunpowder here. It's safer to have a pound of that in your closet than it is to have gasoline in your garage. So, gasoline, my point here is not that gunpowder is safe. It's to the contrary.
It's not.
It is to say that gasoline just isn't safe, and
Right.
we've been taking it for granted, as Tom said. Okay, we have
Well,
one
we're
more.
running toward the end here.
We are, and we have one more story. And
We
then,
got a picture of a Ford F-150 Lightning.
yeah, this looks a little different than the pickup truck I learned to drive in.
Well, it's got a grill, but it doesn't need one.
Probably not. Yeah, I learned to drive in an F-350.
That's a big truck.
It is. You could put 2 tons, it had a 1-ton rating, but you could put 2 tons of gravel in the back of that thing and drive it up a very steep hill with the emergency brake on, as I know because my brother did it and I happened to notice that there was smoke coming up through the floor. We were young in those days.
5% of dealers say yes to Ford's no haggle EV sales policy.
So what percentage is that again, Tom?
65% of dealers say no to Ford's no haggle EV sales policy. So they say, here's the price for the car, take it or leave it.
Yes, but they're saying yes to the policy.
Yes.
You said no the second time too.
So there's no haggle.
Yeah, there's no haggle. That is correct. In September, Ford CEO Jim Farley delivered an ultimatum to the Ford dealers. If you want to sell our battery electric cars and trucks, you'll have to commit to making certain upgrades and you'll need to agree to a no haggle sales process. 2/3 of the dealers agreed. Now the thing about this is
Well,
yeah,
isn't haggling very traditional?
not for me it isn't. That's why I don't buy new cars. I'm not going to haggle. I hate that. I like going in and saying, how much is it? And they tell me and I buy it. Or not.
Well, that's the way it's going.
That's the way it's going. The last car that I bought was the only one that I bought new. And it was the only one, new cars are, you could haggle over used cars if you want, but people haggle over the new price. At the time I bought it, it was a Prius, 2001 Prius, and I bought it in 2001, and it was a new model that was under intense demand. And I said, okay, what about haggling? And I found out very quickly that the demand was so high that they just said, no, this is the price, that's that. And this is a situation also where there's a lot of demand for these Ford vehicles. And they don't want people to be marking the prices up outrageously. But the other thing about this, when they brought this, when Jim Farley told the dealers that they had to commit to upgrades, which are going to cost them a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. He told them they had to commit to these upgrades, and a lot of them didn't want to do that. And the ones who didn't want to do it just don't understand. If they don't commit to these upgrades, 5 or 6 years from now, they're going to have almost no business. They need to have the upgrades so they can service people buying electric vehicles, and in the not very distant future, the automobile market has seen that the vehicles are all going to be electric, or almost all going to be electric. I'm going to put that truck up. I kind of like this picture. Nice picture. Don't you think so, Tom?
That's a nice truck.
Yeah. So are you going to buy an electric vehicle, Tom?
I wasn't planning on it, but
Yeah, I stopped driving probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago.
I had an electric vehicle once.
You did?
I didn't have it for very long. Yeah, it was a Volkswagen, and the guy that I bought it from had installed an electric motor on it instead of the Volkswagen motor.
Yeah.
And the electric motor that he put on it was huge. It was bigger than a bread box.
I'll bet.
And I sold it at a profit, so I didn't have it very long.
Well, you know, electric motors today are not what they were at the time.
They're much smaller.
They're tiny by comparison. I mean, that Prius that I had I think it was a 35 horsepower motor in it, which is more than adequate to keep you going, you know, when you're just kind of going down the highway and you're not accelerating or decelerating or anything. And that motor was about the size of a grapefruit can. And I'm accustomed to a 10 horsepower motor being something I would not want to hold in my lap, you know?
Yeah.
And if you're talking about DC, which this thing is, a 10 horsepower motor would probably not fit into the engine compartment of any car I know of, because they're huge. And these things are, you know, 35 horsepower motor, pretty small. You look into the engine compartment of the vehicle and you could see the gasoline powered engine very clearly, but you wouldn't notice the electric motor unless somebody pointed it out to you.
Well, the motors are small enough to fit inside the wheels now.
Yes, that's true, but they have more than one of them for the car. Sometimes they have 4.
Yeah.
Okay, we have come to fini, I believe.
I think that's the word on the bottom of my page.
And it says here that we are to wish our viewers a sufficiently impeccable week.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Well, I know that Tom is waving goodbye at home because I know Tom. I'll wave goodbye here. And Tom, what do you tell people when we're leaving? I've forgotten.
You'll come back now and see us, yeah?
I have a feeling that people down in wherever, Georgia, Alabama, would say, you just sound like a Yankee. Imitating us. Okay. Bye-bye. Have a good
Adios.
week.